Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a pretty wild acoustic and cultural crisis that is sweeping through neighborhoods all across the country. We're looking at what exactly happens when the massive, joyful boom of outdoor recreation collides head-on with residential peace and quiet. To really understand this, we have to start with the visceral reality of the conflict. Imagine waking up every single morning to a rhythmic, percussive thwack. It's pushed completely peaceful neighbors to the absolute brink of their sanity. There's a resident in Scottsdale who perfectly captured this feeling, saying it sounds like someone is literally firing a staple gun right next to their head at 7:30 in the morning. This shift in how our local parks and courts are being used isn't just a minor inconvenience anymore. For a lot of folks, it feels like an everyday auditory assault that's fundamentally changing how they live in their own homes.
So here's how we're going to break this all down today. First, we'll look at the perfect noise storm. Second, the actual science of the pop. Third, neighborhoods at war. Fourth, the player's perspective. And finally, some real acoustic and community solutions.
All right, part one, the perfect noise storm and the four converging forces driving this crisis.
How did we actually get here? Well, it was triggered by a chain reaction of four cascading factors. First, the pandemic sent millions of us outdoors, scrambling to convert unused surfaces into recreation areas. Second, participation in these sports absolutely skyrocketed. Third, increasing housing density meant these newly packed, loud courts were forced right up against shrinking residential buffer zones. And fourth, and this is a big one, all of this happened in a society with severely eroded social trust. We're living in a time where people are just way quicker to call a lawyer than to knock on a neighbor's door to work things out.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this growth, get a load of this number. USA Pickleball reported a 12-fold increase in participation, hitting 36 million players in just 5 years. They jumped from a mere 3 million back in 2018. That is an absolute tidal wave of new participants, and they are all looking for court space at the exact same time.
And when you take that massive player base and mathematically drop them right next to people's bedroom windows, the results are pretty brutal. City planners and urban researchers documented an unprecedented 40 to 60% spike in recreational noise complaints across major U.S. cities between 2020 and 2023. You quadruple the players and, well, the data tells the exact story you'd expect.
Moving right along to part two, the science of the pop, why this specific sound drives human brains crazy. Think about tennis for a second. It gives off a softer, diffuse thud. You've got strung rackets hitting a pressurized felt ball at a relatively slower pace. But the new wave of paddle sports, it's a completely different beast. You've got a hard polymer ball striking a solid composite paddle, creating a short, sharp, highly repetitive pop. It generates dozens of unpredictable impacts per minute. And the fascinating thing is, your brain biologically struggles to tune this out. It's constantly forced to treat each sharp pop as a brand new signal that requires attention, which is just cognitively exhausting.
And here's where the physics come in. We are talking about a specific mid-range frequency, right between 800 and 1200 hertz. Acoustical engineers point out that human ears are uniquely sensitive to this exact pocket of sound. It carries an incredibly high annoyance factor, easily penetrating walls and grating on human nerves far more severely than other sounds that measure at the exact same decibel level.
To make matters even worse, this sound is aggressively amplified by the flat, hard geography of the courts themselves. Think about it. Chain-link fences do absolutely nothing to stop sound. Throw in some curved walls nearby or a strong prevailing wind, and you create what's known as acoustic focusing. This literally funnels the noise. So in some crazy cases, residents actually hear the pop louder inside their closed bedrooms than people standing just a few dozen feet away in the actual park.
Okay, section 3. Neighborhoods at war, the real fallout of noise nuisance and sleep loss. We are seeing this highly predictable timeline of escalation playing out in homeowners associations across the entire country. It always starts in week 1 with simple, frustrated complaints about 7 a.m. noise. By month 1, the HOA board tries to slap a quick fix on it, like restricting play hours. By month 2, the players organize, flood the meetings, and accuse the board of total overreach. And finally, by month 3, a completely paralyzed leadership board implements a lose-lose compromise. The neighbors are still sleep-deprived, the players feel restricted, and the community culture is totally poisoned.
And when talking it out fails, things get legally messy fast. We're seeing expensive injunctions, novel lawsuits, and outright municipal bans that satisfy pretty much no one. Down in Naples, Florida, neighbors had to fight an incredibly expensive legal battle just to get temporary injunctions on hours. In Sun City, Arizona, lawsuits were actually filed regarding noise-induced tinnitus and disability accommodations. And up in Connecticut, they just slapped a total moratorium on all new court construction until they could study 200-foot setbacks.
The stakes for the folks living next door are genuinely high. Because so much of this play happens right at dawn, it directly interrupts the final stages of natural sleep cycles. We're talking about recognized medical harm, cognitive stress, and anxiety. On top of that, early real estate data suggests that chronic noise exposure can reduce adjacent property values by a measurable 5 to 15%. To put that into perspective, a 15% hit to your home's equity is massive. This isn't just a squabble over a game anymore. It's a battle over health and financial stability. Now let's pivot to part 4, the player's perspective, defending the right to public recreation.
To be completely objective here, we absolutely have to look at the other side of the coin. The players pose a very fair question. They point out that amplified music festivals, loud playgrounds, or busting dog parks generate a ton of noise, but they don't face anywhere near the same level of legal hostility or immediate bans. Many players feel they are dealing with a classic not in my backyard or NIMBY mentality that unfairly singles out their specific recreational choice, maybe even mixed with a little age bias. And honestly, the players have a really powerful defense. First off, when measured right at the property line, the decibel level of court play frequently falls perfectly within the legally permitted 55 to 60 decibel daytime limits. Second, we're talking about public parks here. They're funded by taxpayer dollars for the entire community to use. And third, these sports provide absolutely vital physical activity and do wonders to combat the epidemic of social isolation. Shutting down courts just trades a noise problem for a very real community health crisis.
Which brings us to our final section, acoustic and community solutions, engineering peace through better planning.
The really good news in all of this, we actually have engineered solutions that work. If cities properly implement these strategies, they can successfully reduce that annoying pop to acceptable levels. For instance, properly engineered sound walls can drop the noise by 10 to 15 decibels. Even just tweaking the orientation of the courts so the baselines face away from homes drastically redirects the peak noise. Mandating quiet equipment during those sensitive early hours can slash the impact's noise by another 15 decibels. Throw in some landscaping berms for an extra buffer, and you're making huge progress. The science to fix this is literally already here.
But beyond just physical barriers, we need human solutions. We need community mediation. This means moving people away from entrenched, stubborn positions, like demanding a total ban, and focusing on underlying interests. Like, hey, I just really need to sleep on a Saturday morning. Bringing neighbors to the courts to witness the actual joy of the game, and vice versa. Having players sit in a neighbor's bedroom to hear what that amplified noise sounds like indoors. That builds the exact kind of empathy required to reach an agreement.
All of this naturally builds into smarter municipal planning. We've got to shift away from reacting blindly. This means mandating real noise impact analysis and having meaningful public engagement before a single line is painted on a new court. It means implementing 200 to 300-foot residential setbacks as an absolute standard and looking toward the future by developing purpose-built indoor facilities that contain the acoustics completely.
Ultimately, the big takeaway here is that the explosive growth of outdoor sport is a fantastic thing for public health. The true villain wasn't the sport itself, it was simply the failure of our community planning systems to accommodate that growth responsibly. With early investment, a little bit of empathy, and the proper systems in place, coexistence isn't just some pipe dream, it is entirely achievable.
So as these sports continue to boom globally, from local parks right here to residential neighborhoods abroad, I want to leave you with this final thought. Coexistence is possible, but only if we intentionally choose to treat each other as neighbors rather than obstacles. The next time a community dispute lands on your doorstep, ask yourself, are you just trying to win a fight, or are you trying to actually solve a problem? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gave you a new lens to look at your own local community. See you next time.